name is Ani Baker, and I'm a teacher turned documentary filmmaker based in Los Angeles, where we've basically been on lockdown since March. And when it happened here, all of my jobs had to stop and I had to move and find a cheaper place, and all of it was very stressful, and I cried a lot. And I questioned my place in the universe, and then I just started to become really curious about experiences outside of my own, because I started to realize that everybody in the world, for the first time in my life, was being impacted by the same events. And I just really wanted to know how the events of 2020 were showing up for people elsewhere. So I traveled by talking to people in countries all over the world about what this year has been like for them. So we've talked about COVID and quarantine and the Black Lives Matter movement, and about racism, where they are, about anti-racism, about what we have learned about both of these topics, especially this year, about the highs and lows, the emotional aspects, the mental health, what we're looking forward to. Talking to people all over the world about all of this has made me feel sane and connected and human and less alone and more informed, and I'm honestly so excited to share those feelings with you. And I'm really excited about episode 3 because I bring you here to Los Angeles to talk to a friend of mine, Alita Lachey, who's at a very interesting intersection of a lot of conversations right now, because she is a Black queer woman in America with 2 parents who are cops during ACAB, during Defund the Police, during the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement. And she talks so candidly about all of those topics, and I learned so much just by getting to talk with her about her life and her experience, and I'm really, really excited to share this conversation with you now. Just a ray of sunshine you are.
It's a cloudy day out, so I'm just trying to be that point of light.
Yeah, just brighten things up. First of all, how are you?
I'm good. What's today, Wednesday? It's my 3rd day off in a row. It's really weird. So just trying to enjoy that and understand downtime, I guess, because I still haven't grasped that as a concept.
Well, it's so unnatural still. And it's also just like, it's weird to know that once you get into the groove of something, like even how you use your downtime, it's probably going to shift again, and then you're going to have to start over.
I think that's why I'm really hesitant and weird about it, because I don't want to get into something that I'm so used to, and then 3 months go by, which are gonna go by like that.
Yeah.
3 months go by and it's just like, okay, cool. That whole dynamic and routine that you got, change it. It's over. Now it's something.
Yeah. So right before lockdown happened for you, what did your daily life look like?
Super busy all the time. I had 2 day jobs. One was a consistent, I worked Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. And then I had another job, which was pretty much like catering, where I would pick up events throughout the week, like at literally any given moment. And I had an acting class on Tuesdays. I worked for that acting studio. I still do. And I have to work like 6 hours a week for them. Then, when I'm not doing that, obviously it's auditions and writing. And that's just like the stuff that I know I had to do. At any time, anything else could come up. It could be having to help someone with a self-tape, having to put myself on tape, which I'm learning to do more of now. And seeing friends, I feel like we took that for granted so much.
Mm-hmm. So all of that stuff that you just mentioned, did all of it stop when lockdown started for you?
Yeah. I think the only thing that was kind of a constant was my acting class. We just shifted from being in class together physically to doing it on Zoom, which it was a very weird transition. Sorry, I thought I saw a bug. It was a very weird transition.
Oh, no.
You know how I feel. You know how I feel.
I do.
It was a weird transition because we're doing this thing that is highly, it thrives on being in front of one another. It that actual physical, we're both right here face to face, or all of us are here in this room. And it was interesting and kind of difficult at first to understand that this very personal thing now has to be done with essentially a middleman, because now I'm giving my emotions to this screen, which is playing another screen
Oh,
to
wow.
in front of this person. And it like, even though we can react just like right now, we can react in an instant, it's still, and for me at least, there was still just a second of disconnect.
So not to sound like your therapist, but since lockdown, what does your day-to-day look like now?
The first 3 days were super hard for me because I went from waking up at 5 in the morning and running around and doing stuff until maybe 8 p.m., 9 p.m. to waking up and just being home all day for 3 days. And I didn't realize I was alone because my roommate had left and gone back to Vegas, and I didn't know. I can't even begin to describe that feeling, the feeling of thinking somebody is here with you and then finding out this whole time that they're not.
Ooh, yeah.
Like, and I try not to think back on it because then I get to nitpicking and I'm like, well, what was the sound that I thought that I heard that one day? Then what was
Yeah.
Why did I think this was missing? I thought this moved. So I try not to get into those specifics, but it was hard for me because I am very much a person that, even though it's hard for me to do, I thrive on interacting with other people.
Right.
Like, sometimes it's not the easiest thing for me to do. It's not the most comfortable thing for me to do, but I do thrive in those environments, in those situations. And I firmly believe that we all need human contact. Even the most antisocial, introverted person, we all need human contact. And that's not necessarily like a physical, like I need to touch another person, but I am very much okay with sitting in silence with somebody that I care about. Like, just to know that they're there.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't excited to be back to work. I don't really know who would be, but once I got that schedule of like, okay, I know for sure I'm gonna wake up at 6, I have to be to work at 6:30, or from 6:30 to 2 p.m. So I know that at least from 6 to 2, I have this thing to do 4 days a week from 6 to 2. That's fine. The hardest part was, the way I had to frame it was, can I live alone? Because that's something that I never really had to do. I've never lived alone. And that helped me to not focus. It's weird because trying to see if I could live alone helped me focus on not being alone. That makes any sense. It's like, okay, it was basically like, you have to shift how you think. Shift how you think. You're not alone. You're seeing if you can live alone.
Wow. This is a trial run. This is just an experiment. Yeah. We're just seeing how this goes. Yeah.
Like, once I reframed to think that way, it's been better. It's been easier.
Good.
And a lot more manageable.
Good. That's brilliant. That I am so all about mental coping strategies. Like, I feel like my entire existence is made up of like different coping strategies, different ways to think about stuff, so that I'm like, actually, it's good.
Yes. I mean, that's what we have to do sometimes, because like, otherwise you start slipping into a place that you might not be able to pull yourself out of. And it's hard to, or at least I think it is, it's hard to depend on other people right now. Not because they're not reliable, but because we're all going through this and handling it in such a different way. Like, I wouldn't want to put the added responsibility on someone else. If that's how I would say that. Because I don't want to say like put the burden on someone else, because I want to assume that anybody I reach out to, I wouldn't think that they think me a burden. But I wouldn't want to put the responsibility of potentially taking care of me onto somebody else taking care of them right now.
Sure. Wow. Yeah, that's a great point. And so I bet people, at a time when we need to lean on each other the most, because we're so emotionally drained, right? Or gutted. We're just gutted. We feel guilty about doing it the most also, and we do it the least because we know everyone's going through their own stuff too. That's a great point. How do you feel that your local government you can talk about, or our president, Donald Trump, has handled this situation. How do you feel about the people in charge? Are they doing a good job?
As it stands, no, I don't think that local or national government has done a good job, because here we are, we're facing a global pandemic. And you figure we had a president who, first of all, I don't remember the last, I love Barack Obama as a president. I don't remember the last time we had a great president. Right. Not in my lifetime, at least.
Right.
We had a president, George W. Bush, created the Pandemic Relief Fund. Mm-hmm. He read a book one time and had the foresight to think, hey, this is something that we could face.
Be prepared for it.
This is something we have faced.
Right.
We should be prepared for it. And one of the first things Donald Trump's whole team and himself did was defund the Pandemic Relief Fund, because that could never happen.
Right.
And then here we are, 4 years later, living it. I think the reopening of Los Angeles has been a mistake. And if I may be so bold as to say, I feel that the reason Los Angeles was opened as quickly as it was to take attention away from the insane amount of protests that we were having. I feel that wholeheartedly. The hardest thing for me is everybody is demanding, not everybody, but a lot of people are demanding these things. They want to return to normal. They want this, I want that, I want this, that, and a third. But you can't even do step one.
Right.
The thing that sucks is that, and this is a very American thing, we're so absorbed with the individual that we do not think in the communal. We don't, it's me, always. It's gotten out of hand. We have a president who incites violence, and we're going through a global pandemic, and he's complaining about them painting Black Lives Matter on Fifth Avenue in New York. Sir, people are dying, at exponentially high rates. I'm not surprised that this was mishandled. I'm not surprised that this has turned out the way that it's turned out, because our history of things has shown us that this is not going to go the way that it needs to go.
Yeah.
So it's hard.
Yeah.
And you follow me on Instagram, I think we've followed each other on Instagram for a while. These last couple of weeks are the most vocal I've been on Instagram, because, well, one, everybody has to listen now, but also the things that are the subject of conversation were not to be talked about.
Right.
Because people who don't look like me didn't want to hear it or didn't want to see it. And now it's just this is a terrible thing that's happening. How could we let this happen? And it's just let me show you the ways. While I got you, while you're here, let me just give you all of this information.
Yeah, so I want to talk to you about that shift. Let's just start there. What has it been like for you to now be in a position or to be given a platform to talk about stuff that's always affected you, but now all of a sudden people are listening? How does that feel? What is that like?
The feeling itself changes case to case, situation to situation. Fortunately, I have not had anybody come to me and ask me to educate them. Mm-hmm. I would like to believe that anybody who knows me has a good sense of why do you expect me to teach you now when the internet exists? I'm not about to sit here and give you a play-by-play of what has been my everyday life just so you can get the abridged version. No. There will be people who look like me that understand what I've gone through, but at the same time, I have a very unique situation at the moment. So, both of my parents are police officers, law enforcement. They have been law enforcement my whole life. It's how they met. And protests and anti-cop rhetoric, which I don't speak out against or in favor of. I feel like I'm in a very biased position, but I will never tell somebody, you can't say this, you can't feel this, because I don't know their experience. They absolutely can. It is their right to do so.
You are at the intersection of so much right now. Queer Black women in America. And then you also, both of your parents are first responders and they're in law enforcement. So do you feel differently about police because you love your parents and it feels almost a betrayal to join in with the ACAB movement, let's say? Or is it that you feel differently about police because you see it from the behind, you see it just from a different vantage point because your parents are cops.
I feel like I have a very different view of it. I'm also fortunate. I have very young parents, so I'm able to have conversations with them. I'm able to talk to them. I have a good relationship with them where I can ask them, hey, I want to talk about this. And we're always very clear with one another of, I don't want to talk about that right now. I can't comment on that right now. And that hasn't happened at all during the last 6 to 8 weeks, but it's definitely happened in the past. And I think having those boundaries with each other has been very helpful. But at the same time, I'm still afraid to get pulled over. I got pulled over a couple months ago. I got pulled over on a side street in Glendale where there was one older Mexican gentleman walking down the street, but he was already at the end of the corner before the cop even got out of his car and talked to me. So I was alone on a side street getting pulled over. And I was terrified. Like, it's different at home when I get pulled over because I can say my parent, my mom, usually my mom, I can say my mom is officer so-and-so in this district, or I can say my dad is officer so-and-so from this district, or it's a real thing that I have a get out of jail free card, which is basically a card that like officers get to give their kids.
Wait, literally it's a card?
Okay, so it's not like, it does not say get out of jail free. It's called a courtesy card. And I mean, it's not like if I'm in a high-speed chase and they pulled me over, like I can flash this and be like, oh, it's fine. No, it's basically like, okay, so I did a rolling stop at a stop sign. Sorry, my mom's badge number, her district. It's just one of those things that it's just like further proves, like, I'm not lying to you that my family member is in law enforcement. Like, please cut me some slack. But they don't have to. They don't have to. They absolutely do not have to. I can't say that I trust police officers in general, but I trust the ones I know. I don't trust them necessarily back home either. I just trust that I have a little more leeway to not feel endangered there. I mean, I got pulled over a couple months ago and it was in my old car. One of the officers asked me, he was like, oh, are you from Pennsylvania? I was like, yeah, I'm from, because my car was still registered there. I was like, oh yeah, I'm from Philadelphia. He was like, oh, I'm from Allentown. That little bit of connection, for all I know, could have saved me so much, be it my life, be it time, be it money.
Yeah.
That's
similar.
Yes, I'm still going to interact with police, unfortunately, as if this could be my last moment. And that's a sad reality. The way that my parents taught me, don't be rude, be respectful, keep your hands where they can see them. You have to take it as, like, you have to handle it as it comes. I do not have the all cops are bastards mentality, but I don't believe it's just one bad apple scenario either. Like, I love my parents, obviously. I respect them for what they do. I understand why they did it, why they still do it. But I also know, and I've had them agree with me on certain points, but I'm like, you're good people working in a broken system.
That's what it is. You know, most people are weak-minded. Most people are. When you're starting a new job and you're training, that's almost like the weakest mindset that you can go into something with, because you're like, well, I don't know about this and I'm here to learn, right? Yes. And so they're indoctrinated, and the system is pure evil. That's like, I'm just labeling it at this point. It's pure evil, and you're being indoctrinated into it. You're getting paid a shit ton of money to do it. You don't have to do that much training, and you know you're going to have some power over people now for the first time, and you're going to get a weapon, and then it just snowballs from there. Then it's like, it's the chicken or the egg thing, because I do think that a lot of these cops, like a lot of the ones that we're calling our representatives about and stuff, they're fucking bastards, you know what I mean? Were they before that, and so they were drawn to this profession and it just accentuated it? Or were they just sort of mindless and, you know, the system made it that way?
I take comfort in knowing that if my mom was on the scene where there is obvious neglect in procedure or protocol happening, she will say something. She's a supervisor, so she has all of these other people underneath her. They are her responsibility in a sense. During a protest, somebody threw something in the face of one of our officers. My mom went to the hospital with that officer.
Wow.
I mean, like, it's the same as if I went out into a protest and something happened and I have to go to the hospital. My mom is going to be at the hospital with me. All police work for a broken system.
Sure. Yeah.
We know the origins of police. Police were never never about the community. We know that police started as runaway slave patrol. It was to catch slaves, which were considered property, and bring them back to their owners. And I mean, at the same time, that's what the majority of police do now. They're protecting property. They're protecting things. They're not protecting people, because if they were protecting people, we wouldn't be in the situation that we're in.
I mean, you were the one that taught me that the words protect and serve are nowhere in like the contract that an officer signs. It's not in their training. It's not in their job description to protect and serve. It is on the side of the car though.
Because you see that.
You blew my mind with that information. I had no idea. And I thought, isn't that so telling though? Isn't that just the crux of it? Is that the job as it's been sold to us doesn't exist?
Yes. It's very much back to the individual experience, the individuality that we all feel and experience as Americans, which is why there are so many people who are like, well, not all cops, or Blue Lives Matter. Blue Lives Matter is not a thing. But it's like, just because of your individual positive experiences with police officers have happened, doesn't mean that that is the status quo for everybody. You
said Blue Lives Matter isn't a thing. I'm curious to hear you elaborate on that from your very specific position in this conversation. Why is Blue Lives Matter not a thing?
Blue Lives Matter as a statement is not a thing, because you can take that uniform off. You can take that uniform off and go anywhere in any set of clothing, not your uniform, and people will not know that you're a cop. Black Lives Matter is a thing because at the end of the day, I'm still Black. At the beginning of the day, I'm still Black. Blue Lives Matter isn't a thing because becoming a police officer is a choice. It is a decision you made. Being born Black is not a choice or a decision we make.
Right.
I can quit my job and no longer be an actor and no longer be a model, but I can't change my skin color. And I believe it was created to take away from Black Lives Matter, because now it helps further demonize Black Lives Matter. I think that personally was the goal. Yeah. So it's been a very interesting conversation that I've been witnessing. I haven't been a part of it with a lot of people, fortunately. And I say fortunately because to me that means they're doing the work themselves.
Exactly.
They're doing the work themselves.
Something that I am aware of is that when Black families, Black parents talk to their kids in America about racism and what to look out for, the conversation, from what I understand, centers a lot around how to protect yourself around cops. Your parents are cops. How did they talk to you about racism?
I don't remember distinctly having a conversation about racism with my family or my parents. The conversation about cops and police officers and interacting with them was definitely very different for me because of my parents and what they do. I was never taught to fear police. I was taught to respect them, which I think is for me at least, it was a better approach. Because I was very much the kid of like, I'm not afraid of anyone or anything except bugs. But yeah, I was never taught to fear them because we do desperate things out of fear. And if you do something desperate out of fear, that can put you in the position or situation you don't want to be in. But if you move with respect, then your outcome is different. Even if they're disrespecting you, you remain respectful.
Can we call what is happening since May 25th a revolution, or do we just want to call it a surge in activism?
I want to call it a surge in activism. I think the revolution is going to be way more intense and way more aggressive, but I definitely do think this is a surge in activism. I think it is a moment in time where more people are awake and realizing what's going on than they've ever been.
From my point of view, I look at the surge in activism. I'm just like, this is fantastic. This is the first time I've ever seen nationally people rally behind the same cause, to have this much energy behind the same cause. From my perspective, as a white person, I'm like, this is great, and I am hopeful. Do you feel hopeful as a Black woman?
It comes in waves. There are days when it just seems like when the internet seems too quiet, where I don't see as much as I was seeing, which is to be expected. I don't expect you to be yelling about this and only this forever. I'm not saying that this is all you have to talk about. What we're saying and what we want is for you to still do the things that you love to do, still share the art that you want to share. You want to post a fucking meme, post a meme. Why? Because we still need the laughter and all this. And also, we're not saying that this is all you have to talk about. We're saying don't let the conversation stop. The conversation cannot stop. You posting a meme is not going to stop the conversation.
Right.
So long as you keep posting and talking about it. There was a girl that I follow on Instagram, and one of the things she said is she's like, I don't feel comfortable sharing my art here. And I messaged her. I was like, share your art. Share, because in the constant scrolling that we're doing, we need that break.
I've become aware recently of the importance of also in this conversation showing Black laughter and happiness and Black people thriving, and specifically because the people who probably don't want to pay so much attention to the movement and maybe are racist and want to stay, in their mindset or whatever, I think that they only being inundated with Black death, it stops raising awareness, and now it's creating more of a problem where they're just like, it's just a big bummer, I don't want to have anything to do with any of it. So also sharing stories of triumph and laughter and seeing a deer when you go hiking, like, is arguably just as important at this point.
Yeah, because the thing that white people need to realize is, yes, this is a lot of traumatic shit to see. It's hard to deal with it and see it every day, right? We do. We're seeing this every day because it's in our communities. It's in our families. Like, it's happening to family members. Like, shit that's not being put on the news. You're exhausted by 5 to 6 weeks. Imagine 26, 28, 35 years more. First of all, I love seeing carefree Black people. It is heartwarming and it shows the resilience that we have, that we are dealing with these traumatic things day in and day out, but at the same time, we can still laugh. In any situation, you cannot inundate yourself with nothing but terrible things. I don't know the statistics, but I think America is leading the world in depression as well. Like, there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that.
Individualism. It's the individualism. It's the disconnect. Yeah. You live for yourself. I mean, that's just such a lonely existence, and I think we have a culture where we're taught that we need to live for ourselves first and foremost, and it's empty.
There's a reason why things work the way that they do. There's a reason why our education plan, like the structure of what we learn in school and how we learn it, there's a reason that has not fully changed since the late 1800s. Why? Because if you keep us just undereducated, we will not learn that we deserve better. We will not learn that we can have better. And if we don't learn that we deserve better and that we can have better, we cannot challenge the authorities that are responsible for the fact that we do not have better. So
yes,
it's like the thing with everybody now learning how outrageous their city budgets are. Yeah. That's not new.
Yeah.
A lot of those budget changes, I will say a lot of those budget changes happened in the early 90s. That's not excusing it. That means it's been going on for almost 30 years. It's not a thing that was widely talked about. Why? Because the people who need to talk about it did not understand that they needed to talk about it. And why didn't they understand that they needed to talk about it? Because they weren't taught about it. And if you're not taught about it, you don't know that something's out of place.
That's incredible. That's a great point. We don't talk about Black history nearly to the degree that we talk about whatever California history and US history. So we're not taught about these injustices, and so we grow up being like blind to them for the most part. If you're not Black, blind to them for the most part, and then it's like, well, if I would have known sooner, it's like, yeah, it was designed so that you didn't know sooner. What has been like one positive takeaway or silver lining from all of it that you've experienced?
I mean, overall, and not related to anything going on in the world other than the pandemic, I got to spend 5 weeks with my family, which I have not done since I moved here in 2014. In 6 years, it was the first time that I had downtime where I didn't have an end in sight to when I had to go back to work and doing things to maintain my life. And the last thing would probably be seeing people's eyes open to everything that's not necessarily wrong, but everything that's not right. Like for so many people, mostly white people, but for so many people, everything's been fine.
Yeah.
And for the first time in my however many years of living, never telling anybody how old I am, in my however many years of living, I'm seeing people finally like pale and think, oh, shit's not okay. Like it might have been okay for me, but shit has not been okay for a very long time. It's been very interesting to see that they're seeing it. I say that that's like a positive thing because I'm seeing people fight back against that individuality. I'm seeing people realize that, oh, it's not just me. It's not just my circumstance and my like dealings with what's working for me is not working for everybody, and it's not their fault. Because that's a major thing that I think a lot of people fall back on is like, oh, well, it's not working out because you didn't try hard enough, or it's not working out because you didn't do this, you didn't do that. And now they're seeing it's not that these people, Black people, brown, indigenous people of color, like, it's not that it's because we didn't do this, it's because we did the same things that you're doing, but it works differently for you than it does for us. The fact that I can at least right now look and see that they get it. Like I've had people say, like I've seen people just be actively loud and yelling, and I'm like, that's beautiful. That's beautiful that you're like, this is fucked up and this is wrong. And I know I can't fix it alone. I can't fix it alone. That is the biggest thing is that I'm taking away from this is people realizing I can't fix this alone. They can't fix this alone. We have to do this. And to hear people saying, we have to fix this, to hear white people talking to other white people and saying, this is our responsibility, which in recent years, nobody would take that responsibility. Nobody would say that, like, oh, that was my ancestors' fault. I didn't do that. Yeah, but you are the product of your ancestors, as I am of mine. Right. And it was not my ancestors' fault. But here I am still fighting their struggles and their battles. Yeah, seeing people cast aside the individualism that we are taught has been one of the greatest takeaways.
I love that so much. Alita, you're so wonderful to talk to. You're brilliant. Thank you. You're the best. I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you later.
All right. Bye.
Bye.